Defending Israel with David Harris is made possible in part by Barbara and Bob Goodkind, the Paul and Lynn Light Family Foundation, To Life, to Love, the Patricia Worthen Ullman Foundation.
Hello JBS viewers, I'm David Harris and welcome back to Defending Israel. We talk a great deal about the problems we face as a Jewish community. I want to focus a little bit on the problems, but more I want to focus today on solutions to the problem. What is it that we can and we should be doing? First of all, we need to understand that we face a real problem. This is not a makeshift problem. This is not a problem that's here today and magically gone tomorrow. And therefore, if I can draw a parallel, perhaps a medical parallel, it would be like saying we have skin cancer, but we're going to treat it with first aid cream and a Band-Aid and hope that it makes the problem go away. We're going to kind of try to wish it away. That's not going to work. And those who want to put the first aid cream on the skin cancer and add a Band-Aid are not helping us. This is way deeper. I've spent much of the last 2 years, I don't think JBS viewers know this, writing a book. I was approached in October of 2023 by Oxford University Press and asked to write a book which they entitled Anti-Semitism, What Everyone Needs to Know. In writing the book, I thought I already knew a lot about the subject. My own family, my mother, my father, my wife, other members of my family had lived the history of anti-Semitism very personally. I had spent nearly 50 years in the Jewish organized world and certainly had dealt with anti-Semitism in 1,000 different ways. I had read lots of books and heard lots of testimonies, so I thought I knew a lot. But the reality was, in the last nearly 2 years, I learned even more. And among the things that I learned was the durability of anti-Semitism, the kind of creativity of anti-Semitism. As Douglas Murray referred to it, the shape-shifting virus that we know as anti-Semitism. So broadly speaking, if we look at the history of anti-Semitism, for centuries it was largely religiously focused. It was the Christian world largely saying that we have replaced your theology, we have superseded your theology, and you either embrace our theology and you atone eternally for the alleged murder of Jesus, the Son of God, or we're going to destroy you in countless ways. And in the Islamic world, as we heard last week from Dalia Ziyada, once Islam emerged in the 7th century as the perfected monotheistic religion, the Jews were often seen as an obstacle by their stubborn refusal to embrace Islam, and they paid a price along the way as well. But then by the 19th century, what became known as racialized anti-Semitism largely replaced religiously based anti-Semitism. And then it became a function of what ultimately became the Holocaust, that Jews were a race, they were not white, indeed they were poisoning the white race, and therefore they had to be exterminated. And even the escape valve during the religious anti-Semitism of Jews seeking to perhaps convert out was denied to Jews who were told, according to a very elaborate racial set of laws by the Nazis, that if one parent, both parents, one grandparent, two grandparents were Jewish, it absolutely did not matter whether you went to synagogue or not, whether you were a Zionist or not, whether you celebrated Jewish holidays or not. You were racially Jewish, and therefore you were an Untermensch, a person beneath the human race, and you had to be destroyed like a virus. And then after the Nazis gave racialized anti-Semitism such a bad name as a result of the Holocaust and the murder of 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children, in an industrialized form of genocide, indeed the name itself, genocide, emerged from the Holocaust, there came a third chapter in the history of anti-Semitism, which brings us to today. And that was an anti-Semitism that focused less on the individual Jew, the Jew who refused to convert to Christianity or Islam, or the Jew who was a product of one or more Jewish parents or grandparents or even great-grandparents, but the collective Jew known as the State of Israel. And it's interesting, it's striking, it's illuminating today to see how many of the tropes, the themes of anti-Semitism applied over centuries are now being applied to Israel. That as the Jew previously knew unbridled evil, was constantly scheming and plotting to destroy the non-Jewish world, to poison the wells, to kill Christian children on the eve of Passover, to use their blood in the baking of matzah. All of these themes of anti-Semitism over centuries are now being applied to the State of Israel. It's quite interesting, isn't it? It's quite alarming, isn't it? This notion that, for example, if one goes to social media, that these influencers, these anti-Israel obsessors, keep focusing on this alleged Israeli glee, this joy in killing Palestinian children and constantly inflating numbers, or starving the Palestinian people, or infecting them with disease, or seeking in other ways to destroy and sabotage the Palestinian people. None of this comports with the truth. But in an era of post-truth, a word which the Oxford English Dictionary coined as the word of the year, if I recall, in 2016, truth doesn't matter. The facts be damned. I have my facts, my narratives, my truths, and thanks to social media, I can reach thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and I can keep repeating these allegations: genocide, child murder, starvation, rape of Palestinian women, wanton destruction, a smile on their face with the devious, malicious, malevolent Jew now collectively organized in the state and the army, perpetrating these crimes as they once perpetrated crimes as individuals throughout history. This is what we're facing. And therefore, as I said, in coming to grips with these new realities, we need to have strategies that adapt to these new realities. Now, JBS viewers know, because I've said it more than once on this show since October the 7th, 2023, that fateful day, that we can no longer rely on an October 6th playbook. We need an October 8th playbook. For decades, that October 6th playbook worked pretty well for Jews, for the U.S.-Israel relationship. For example, after the Second World War, some 500,000 American Jewish soldiers returned from the battlefronts in the Pacific and in Europe. And in the trenches, they were together with other Americans. They relied on each other. They trusted each other. They had each other's back, all in an effort to win the war. Did this usher in a new America? So it seemed, a much more open, a progressive America, a more inclusive America. In addition, Jews thought that as the facts of the Holocaust began to emerge, first with the abduction of Adolf Eichmann from Argentina in 1960, then with the NBC series on the Holocaust about 10 years later, then with the books of Elie Wiesel, and the entry into popular American culture of stories about the Holocaust, a museum on the nation's mall about the Holocaust, introduction of Holocaust material into many school systems, visits by Holocaust survivors to countless educational places in America, that this too would serve as a firewall against anti-Semitism. And then we were able to say that Israel was an ally of the United States, a reliable, dependable, democratic ally. It began with the presidency of Harry Truman, Truman being the first of the world leaders to recognize the rebirth of Israel in May 1948. And it continued from Democrat to Republicans to Democrats to Republicans, sometimes a little bit more passionate, sometimes slightly less, but consistently pro the U.S.-Israel relationship. And we reached a point where Robert Putnam, a professor at Harvard, was regularly saying that in his studies and surveys and polling, Jews in America were considered to be the most admired and respected religious community in the United States. We had made it, it seemed. Liberal democracy had worked. We had proved that even the Zionist belief that when Israel was recreated, that the diaspora would slowly wither and disappear because there was no diaspora experience that could fully protect the Jews. America turned out to be, we believed, the exception. And we counted on that American exceptionalism. And for a very long time, that trust was warranted and justified. But now here we are, and anti-Semitism has surged by every statistic, from the annual FBI numbers to the counts of the Anti-Defamation League and others. It has surged in many places, in many ways, and of course even lethally, as we have seen now from Los Angeles to Boulder to Washington and elsewhere. So what do we do? What do we do? Do we throw away the first aid cream and the Band-Aids? How do we replace the October 6th playbook? What do we need today? I believe the first thing we need today is to be sure that we understand the facts. Others may think there are multiple truths and competing narratives, but folks, some facts are facts. They're indisputable facts, and we need to know them. We need to digest them, and we need to remind the world that on some things we're not ready to budge. October 7th was not a debatable set of events. October 7th, 2023 was a brazen, unprovoked attack by thousands of people led by Hamas from Gaza, with the sole intention of killing as many people as possible. Women, children, men, the elderly, the disabled. It didn't matter. If they were on Israeli soil, they were destined for death. It was intended to rape as many as possible. It was intended to kidnap as many as possible. And though I've said it before, it bears repeating that on that one day, in American proportional terms, some 42,000 people were killed. 1,200 in Israel, multiplied times 35, America being that much larger. On that one day, in American terms, some 8,000 people were kidnapped. In one day. That's what happened on October 7th. Now, there are those who feebly try and tell us, no, it's not really what happened. It was an act of resistance. Resistance. Resistance to what? Resistance to the fact that in 2005, some 18 years earlier, Israel had left Gaza lock, stock, and barrel. removed every single soldier, every single settler, even every single gravestone. It left Gaza and wished Gaza success under its own governance. Mind you, another fact, Gaza had never before in history ever been given the chance for self-governance and self-rule. Ottoman Turkey had ruled Gaza for centuries. No one ever discussed self-rule for local residents. Egypt had ruled Gaza for decades before the 1967 war, when in an act of self-defense, Israel won and acquired Gaza as a consequence. Egypt had imposed military rule for decades. No one had ever spoken about self-rule, much less sovereignty and independence. So, fact, in 2005, Israel left and said to Gaza, "We wish you well. We hope you'll become a Singapore and not a Somalia or a Syria. It's in our interest as your neighbor." It didn't happen. So, the act of resistance? No. In 2023, it was not an act of resistance. It was not an attempt to challenge occupation. There was no occupation. There had been none since 2005. An encirclement? No, there was no encirclement, because the world wants you to forget that Egypt borders Gaza. Egypt, an Arab state, a Muslim majority nation, borders Gaza as well. That's a fact. That's a fact that all the deflectors in social media and elsewhere cannot hide. So we have Gaza, which was deoccupied in 2005. We have Gaza, which witnessed a genocidal invasion in 2023. We have Gaza with two borders, not one. And we have Gaza, fact, ruled by Hamas. Fact, the Hamas charter calls for the complete and total destruction of the state of Israel. So fact, this is not about a two-state solution. This is not about finding coexistence between Gaza and Israel. This is a war launched by Hamas, a Hamas part of the Muslim Brotherhood network, a Hamas actively supported militarily and financially by Iran. These are facts, indisputable facts, and we need to ingest them, and we need to internalize them, and we need to stand up clearly and unequivocally and unapologetically and speak about facts. Because those who want to change the narrative are in fact seeking to cheerlead Hamas. And let's remember, Hamas is not just opposed to Israel. Hamas is a designated terrorist organization on the US government list and put there by President Bill Clinton in the 90s. It is a designated terrorist organization by the European Union. And Hamas is not only anti-Israel, it is anti-democratic, it is anti-Western, and clearly anti-Western values. So those, especially from the far left, those who espouse LGBTQ rights and union rights and women rights and the rights of minorities and the rights of dissent and protest, are actually supporting a cause which will crush them if they ever fall under the sway of those groups. So number one, know the facts. Number two, we have to teach our children. We have to teach our children not just the facts, though they are important, obviously, but we have to ensure that they are proud Jews, that they don't waver, they don't have doubts, that they understand that they come from a heritage, a tradition, a legacy that spans thousands of years, that has an extraordinary history for all of the dark moments that Jews have experienced, that this is the people, this small band of people today barely 16 million in a world of more than 8 billion, some 1 in 500 on the planet Earth. This is the people who introduced such revolutionary concepts as one God, not a multiplicity of gods, not a group of human deities known as pharaohs and emperors and kings, but one transcendent God, which was the foundation for human equality, that introduced the notion of the Shabbat, the day of rest, that all people, slaves, animals, everyone had the right to respect and dignity and to rest, that introduced a moral code in a largely amoral, if not immoral world, and stuck to that moral code, a set of laws that said, no, it's not up to the pharaoh or the king or the tyrant or the despot or the dictator to tell us what laws should be. We believe that there is again an overarching law inspired by God, the one God. We have to teach our children that being Jewish is ennobling, enriching, that being Jewish is something they should be proud of, that being Jewish has 3 essential pillars. It has a religious tradition, a set of beliefs, perhaps most fundamentally encompassed in the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's non-negotiable. The Lord is one. The Lord is not multiple. The Lord is not many. The Lord is one. We are a people. We take from the Talmud, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh. All Jews are responsible for one another. That does not mean we are not also responsible for the larger world in which we live, but it does say that we as a people, we as a nation, we as a tribe, we as a community must look out for one another, whether we live in New York, whether we live in Jerusalem, in Johannesburg, in Buenos Aires, in Toronto, in Singapore, wherever we may live. And yes, we are a people tied to a land, a very specific land. No, it's not Poland. No, it's not Ukraine. No, it's not Iraq. No, it's not Brooklyn or Berkeley. It's the land of Jerusalem and Zion. It's most especially captured in the words from Hatikva, Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim, to be a free people in our own land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. It's these fundamental principles, the principle of a belief system, the principle of a collective responsibility, and the principle of the link to a land. Obviously, when one discusses all 3, there are various interpretations within pluralistic Judaism, and I subscribe to it. But within boundaries, we're not giving up Zion and Jerusalem. We're not giving up the notion of one God. And we're certainly not giving up the notion of mutual responsibility, mutual care and concern. So we need to teach our children at a much deeper level than many of us have until now, because unlike my own life journey in America in the 50s and 60s, and my adult children's life journey, our children and grandchildren growing up now are facing and are going to face many more obstacles and challenges as Jews than we did. They need to be ready and prepared to stand up proudly and unapologetically and without fear. And third, we need to understand that the political equation has changed. We Jews need to become a lot smarter. And I say this as a lifelong nonpartisan, a lifelong Jewish advocate. I said it long before October 7th. I'm saying it again now to JBS viewers. We need both major political parties to be fighting for the Jewish vote. Neither party should ever take the Jewish vote for granted. Both parties should believe the Jewish vote is listening, is interested, and potentially available. And they need to know, as we face growing anti-Semitism and growing challenges to the image of Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship, that these issues are central to how we vote. And so we have, for example, here in New York City, where my family and I live and where I'm recording in the JBS studio, we have a challenge which takes us to a whole new level as we look to the mayor's election in November. We have a candidate who won the primary, the Democratic primary, which usually equates to winning the election in November, who was a longtime and proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA. What's that? Well, go back and look, for example, in 2020, when the DSA here in New York City distributed a questionnaire to all the city council candidates and said to the city council candidates, will you pledge here in this questionnaire that if you're elected to the New York City Council, you will not visit the State of Israel? And will you indicate as well whether you support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement? Those were the only two questions in the entire DSA questionnaire given to every single candidate for the City Council of New York on foreign policy. There was nothing on China and human rights. There was nothing on Iran and nuclear weapons. There was nothing on other tyrannical and despotic states that are hostile, inimical to America and democratic values. Only Israel. And the candidate that may become the next mayor of New York was and is affiliated with that movement, the DSA. And until today has played all kinds of verbal gymnastics with the notion of globalize the Intifada, which, let's be absolutely clear, means to commit violence against Jews throughout the world. That's what the globalize the Intifada means. It's a license to attack and kill Jews. Jews because Jews are Jews, because Jews support Israel. So we have to be clear, and we have to insist that since he is also running as a Democrat, that Democrats who are now hiding, fearful of challenging him and his movement, find the courage to stand up and say, this is a step too far. We will not accept this. We cannot accept this. We have to be certain that in both political parties, the voices, and there are voices in both, in the Republican Party that are pulling towards isolationism, that are trying to create a whole new narrative about America's mistaken entry into the Second World War, that are calling out Israel as somehow a pariah nation, that they too are isolated in the Republican Party, as those voices in the Democratic Party are as well. Folks, we've got a lot of work to do. Each of us can do something. And finally, when it comes to Jewish organizations and philanthropy, remember, do the stress test. What was good in October 6th may or may not be good in October 8th. We should all want to know, post-October 7th, what have Jewish organizations done successfully to move the needle, to change the discourse and conversation. Don't just read their lofty mission statements, ask the tough questions, and pay special attention to key organizations like AIPAC, ISCAP, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, those doing great work in Israel like Hadassah, the Weizmann Institute, Soroka Hospital, and of course, JBS. Because where else on television can we turn on and listen to these voices talking about Israel and the challenges as we do uniquely here on JBS. So, dear JBS viewers, we've got a lot of work to do. Each of us can do some, maybe not all, but some of what we need to do. The time to start is not tomorrow, it's achshav, now. Together, we can, we must, and we will prevail. This is David Harris, defending Israel, and looking forward to seeing you again next week.